My daughter kicked me out unless I apologized to her mother-in-law. I said all right. The next morning, she smirked until she saw my empty room and the file I left behind. And long before the lawyer ran in shouting, none of us knew the real reason this all began. My name is Laura Ellington. I am 60. It started at a family dinner that should have been uneventful. Lindsay had invited me because she said it would be good for everyone to spend time together. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe we were settling into a warmer rhythm after so many strained years. Vivian, my daughter's mother-in-law, arrived dressed like she always did, expensive fabrics, and a smile that never met her eyes. She spoke loudly about positions, promotions, and the importance of reputation in the kind of corporate circles Charlotte is known for. I listened quietly. I had spent decades in those same circles. I knew how quickly reputations fell when numbers did not add up. When she mentioned her department had received a routine inquiry from a federal compliance office, I spoke gently, not critically. The way someone older speaks to someone who may be overlooking a detail. Just double-check your documentation. I told her. Those inquiries can turn into deeper audits if something looks off. Vivian froze. Her wine glass stopped midway to her lips. The room fell silent for a moment too long. Then she laughed a brittle, controlled thing and told the table. What she means is she thinks I am hiding something. I blinked. I did not say that. But she had already turned to Lindsay, voice trembling just enough to appear wounded. Your mother insulted my integrity. In front of everyone. Lindsay shifted uncomfortably, glancing between us. Instead of asking what I meant or why I had said it, she reached for Vivian's hand. Mom, why would you say something like that? She whispered, as if I had committed some unforgivable sin. I tried to explain, calmly, quietly, but Vivian cut me off, raising her voice just enough for the room to feel her indignation. She twisted my warning into a personal attack, claiming I had publicly accused her of fraud. By the end of the evening, Lindsay's face was red with embarrassment directed only at me. When we got back to her house, she closed the door behind us and spoke in a voice I had not heard since she was a teenager. Mom, you will apologize to Vivian tomorrow, in front of her family. If you do not, you cannot stay here. And you can forget about keeping your job at the firm. She will make sure of it. I stood there, the daughter I raised standing in judgment beside a lie someone else created. I'll consider it, I said softly. Not surrender, just a pause to think. And that was how the night ended, quiet. Heavy. I realized I needed space. I booked a nearby motel to think. Lindsay went upstairs after delivering her ultimatum, leaving me standing alone in the hallway. I could hear her moving around in her room, drawers opening, the muffled hum of her voice as she called someone, likely Vivian, reporting that the problem had been handled. I walked to the guest room, folded the few clothes I kept there, and packed them into a single small suitcase. When I walked past the living room, Lindsay appeared at the top of the stairs. Are you really going to make this difficult? She asked. I am not making anything difficult, I said quietly. I am doing what you asked. Her expression flickered with something doubt. Maybe, but she straightened her shoulders. Good. Vivian needs to feel respected. I nodded once. Then I will leave before sunrise. She hesitated, as if she wanted to soften, but in the end she turned away. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. The night air felt colder than it should have. I rolled my suitcase down the driveway, the wheels clicking against the pavement, like a reminder that I no longer belonged in the place I once helped her move into. I didn't look back. There was nothing behind me I recognized anymore. The motel I chose sat just off the interstate, a place for travelers and night shift workers. The man at the counter glanced at my suitcase and didn't ask questions. That was a small mercy. Inside the room, I set my bag down and sat on the edge of the bed. My hands rested on my knees, steady, the way they used to be during interviews and hearings when the slightest tremor could expose a lie or a truth too dangerous to name. I had spent more than 30 years in compliance and risk management. I learned to read numbers the way some people read faces. I knew when something didn't add up, and when someone worked too hard to hide it. Vivian's reaction at dinner replayed in my mind too sharp, too defensive, too frightened. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the silence settle around me. There was a reason she twisted my warning into an attack, and I already knew where to find the proof. By early morning, I had checked out of the motel and taken a rideshare to a small storage facility near Uptown. The manager recognized me immediately. "Morning, Miss Ellington," he said. "You haven't been here in years." "I know," I replied. "I need access to my unit." He handed me the key and left without another word. People who work around storage units learn not to ask questions. Inside the narrow hallway, I walked straight to the metal door near the back. My fingers hesitated on the lock for only a moment before I turned it. The light flickered on, revealing boxes neatly stacked, labeled from a life I had tried not to revisit. The briefcase was still there, tucked away in a corner I had trusted. I lifted it down. The weight alone brought back memories, long nights, tense meetings, the kind of silence that fills boardrooms when someone knows the truth but isn't allowed to say it. I set the briefcase on a crate and pressed the combination. It opened with a soft click. On top lay the audit report. Beneath it, correspondence, statements, internal findings, all tied to one person, Vivian Hargrove. I had flagged the discrepancies years ago, but the company chose a quieter path. "She has family connections," he told me. "The company cannot afford scandal. We will contain it internally." Containment meant sealing everything in this briefcase and moving me to a different division. I heard a voice behind me. The manager had poked his head into the hallway. "Everything all right, Ms. Ellington?" "Yes," I said softly. "I am just gathering what I need." He nodded and stepped away. I closed the briefcase and held it against my chest. Vivian had spent more than a decade pretending none of this existed. She had every reason to fear a simple warning at a dinner table. I turned off the light, locked the unit, and walked outside with the briefcase in hand, knowing exactly what I needed to do next. By the time Lindsay and Vivian reached the motel, I had already turned in the key and walked out hours earlier. I learned later how it unfolded. Piece by piece, from the clerk and from Lindsay herself, they arrived together. Vivian led the way, her heels clicking sharply on the tile, irritation radiating from every step. Lindsay followed behind her, arms crossed, jaw tight. "We are looking for my mother," Lindsay told the clerk. "Room 23, the clerk, a young man with tired eyes, glanced toward the empty key slot. "Checked out before sunrise." Vivian lifted an eyebrow, amused. "Of course she did. She knows she caused a problem. Guilt makes people run." Lindsay exhaled sharply. "Mom hates conflict. She probably left to avoid apologizing." Vivian smirked at that slow, satisfied, certain. "Let's check her room. Maybe she left some things behind." The clerk hesitated. "She left early. Very early. Looked determined." Vivian waved a dismissive hand. "She probably went home to sulk. Let's go." They left the motel confident, united in their version of the story I had fled in shame, afraid to face the consequences of my supposed insult. Vivian reveled in the narrative. Lindsay leaned on it to justify her ultimatum. Neither of them imagined I had walked out with my suitcase and the locked briefcase pressed against my side. Not running, but preparing. Their certainty carried them straight into the moment that waited for them inside that empty room in Lindsay's house. I was already far ahead of them, moving towards something they had no idea existed. Lindsay unlocked the door to my room with a sigh, heavy enough to echo down the hallway. Vivian followed her inside, already rehearsing the lines she planned to deliver once she found me. "We will give her one more chance," Vivian said. "She will apologize properly this time. She has no choice." Lindsay nodded. though her voice wavered. She will be embarrassed. But she brought this on herself. They stepped into the room together and stopped. Everything was gone. The closet was empty. Hangers lined neatly along the bar. The nightstand drawer stood open, bare. The suitcase that had always sat under the bed was missing. Only one thing was left to file. Neatly set on the bed. Lindsay swallowed hard. "Mom!" She didn't take anything else. Vivian moved closer. Slow at first, then faster as recognition sparked across her face. She stared at the file like it was a live wire. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no. This cannot be." Her hand trembled as she snatched it up. The front page was visible even from the doorway. Internal audit findings. Hargrove Division, confidential, for compliance review. Lindsay stepped beside her. "What is that?" Vivian snapped the folder shut. "It is nothing you need to see." Her voice had lost all its earlier sharpness. It was thin now, stretched and unstable. "Mom," Lindsay said quietly, "you look scared." Vivian didn't answer. She gripped the folder so tightly the edges bent. The front door opened downstairs. Heavy footsteps rushed up the stairs. Lindsay turned just as a man in a suit appeared in the hallway, breathing hard. "Where is she?" he demanded. "Tell me Laura did not submit that file. Tell me she did not reopen this." Vivian's silence filled the room. The truth inside that file was enough to break the smirk she had worn only hours earlier. The man in the suit stepped fully into the doorway, chest rising and falling as if he had run the entire length of the street. His tie was crooked, and his hair looked like he had dragged a hand through it in the car. He spotted the file in Vivian's grip and swore under his breath. "Vivian," he said, voice low and urgent. "Tell me she did not submit that." Lindsay blinked. "Who are you?" He snapped open a badge, Corporate Counsel, Hargrove Financial. Vivian's fingers tightened around the folder. "You are overreacting." He stared at her, incredulous. "I am overreacting. This triggers renewed federal attention. Any unresolved discrepancy could escalate." Lindsay's confusion sharpened. "What discrepancies?" Vivian turned her face away. "Nothing that concerns you. Everything concerns her now," the lawyer said. "Because if this goes public, your entire department and anyone connected to you will be pulled into it." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "How did she even get that file?" Vivian swallowed. "She worked in compliance. Years ago." His eyes widened. "Then she knows exactly what she is holding." Lindsay's breath trembled. "What did my mother warn you about?" Vivian did not answer. So the lawyer did. 12 years ago, your mother's team flagged irregularities in Vivian's reporting. They recommended escalation. Senior management buried it instead. He exhaled sharply. "If this resurfaces now, we are finished." Lindsay stared at Vivian as if seeing her for the first time. "You told me she insulted you. You told me she was lying." Vivian let out a thin, brittle laugh. "She should not have meddled." "She did not meddle." The lawyer cut in. "She told the truth." He turned to Lindsay. "Where is she? Where did Laura go after leaving this file here?" "I do not know," Lindsay whispered. "She left before sunrise." The lawyer's jaw tightened. "If she has already submitted this to the auditors, to the compliance board, to anyone, we cannot stop what follows. Downstairs." The front door still hung half open. The morning air drifting inside as if the house itself was holding its breath. No one knew where I had gone. And none of them knew who I had sent the file to. I sat in the quiet lobby of the small rental office near Freedom Park, the briefcase beside my chair. The pen in my hand hovered over the lease papers, while my mind drifted backward farther than I had allowed it to in years. 12 years earlier. I had been the lead compliance officer at Bank of Charlotte Trust. Long nights, thick files, and the constant hum of fluorescent lights defined that part of my life. I rarely spoke about it. Compliance work was not glamorous, but it shaped my instincts, the ones Vivian underestimated so carelessly. I remembered the day her name landed on my desk. Potential irregularities, the preliminary note said. I had looked through the numbers once, then twice. Transfers that did not follow protocol, approvals that bypassed required signatures. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to shut down a department if exposed. I had called Vivian into a conference room. She sat across from me, composed, but tense around the eyes. You need to correct these discrepancies. I told her, if this escalates, you will be facing an internal investigation. She smiled thin, defensive. You do not understand my position. I understand it exactly. I replied, and the numbers still have to make sense. When the senior executives swept it under the rug, I pushed back. This is a mistake. I warned. If regulators ever revisit this, we will all answer for it. I was reassigned shortly after, to a less visible role within compliance. I stayed silent because Lindsay was newly engaged to Vivian's son, and I did not want my work to stain her future. I told myself I was protecting her. Now, 12 years later. She was in a house tearing herself apart because she believed Vivian over me. I closed the pen, signed the lease, and slid the papers back across the counter. The truth had always been there. Lindsay simply had never seen who her mother actually was. I had just finished signing the last page of the lease when I heard hurried footsteps outside the office door. Lindsay appeared in the doorway, hair unbrushed, eyes wide and exhausted. She looked as though she had aged years since the night before. "Mom," she said, breath catching. "Please, can we talk?" I nodded to the leasing agent, who quietly stepped into the back room. Lindsay closed the door and faced me. "Why did you leave without saying anything?" she asked. "I woke up and you were gone." Vivian said. I raised a hand gently. "Lindsay, stop repeating her words. Say your own." Her mouth opened, then closed again. I am sorry," she said finally. "I should not have yelled. I should not have told you to leave. But you have to admit you were harsh with her last night. I warned her." I replied, "That is all." She felt attacked. Lindsay insisted, "You know how sensitive she is about her job." "Sensitive," I echoed softly. "Or frightened." Lindsay looked at me sharply, the first flicker of doubt breaking through. "Mom, the lawyer came to the house. He said there were issues in the past. I do not understand any of it." "I know," I said. "You were never supposed to." She stepped closer. "Just tell me you did not mean to make things worse. Tell me you did not send anything." I met her eyes, calm and steady. "I told the truth, and I protected you for 12 years. That ends now." Her shoulders sagged. "I want to fix this." "I know you do," I said, "but fixing something begins with seeing it clearly." Lindsay swallowed hard, standing in the doorway of a life she no longer recognized. Trust had fractured between us, and forgiveness, if it ever came, would have to grow in the cracks. Lindsay followed me out of the leasing office, still shaken, still trying to hold on to the version of events she had believed only a day earlier. Her phone rang before she could speak again. She glanced at the screen, hesitated, then answered. "Evan, what is going on?" Her husband's voice carried through the speaker, tight, angry, disbelieving. "Mom, there's an issue with compliance documents submitted by your mother. Federal auditors are reviewing it. Do you hear me? Your mother submitted it." Lindsay's hand began to tremble. "Evan, slow down." "No," he snapped. "I need the truth. Did your mother warn us? Did you force her out because Mom said she insulted her?" A long silence stretched between them. Lindsay looked at me, eyes wet. I stayed still. This was her moment to face what she had helped build. Finally, Lindsay whispered, "I believed Vivian." "You should not have," Evan said, "because everything in that file is real." He hung up. Lindsay lowered the phone slowly. as if her body no longer understood how to move. "You sent it," she said, voice thin. "I did," I replied, "2 days ago." "But why now?" "Because silence was protecting the wrong person," I said. "And because you deserved the truth more than you deserved comfort." She sank onto the bench outside the office, elbows on her knees. "Vivian said you tried to tear her down. She said you attacked her reputation. I told her to check her documentation. I said—" She twisted the rest. Lindsay pressed both hands to her face. "Evan is furious. His family is falling apart. And none of this would have happened," I said gently, "if Vivian had told the truth then, or now." She lifted her head, eyes red, searching for something steady in me she had ignored for years. "Where do we go from here?" I sat beside her, leaving space between us. Where we went next depended on who she chose to become. Now that the truth was finally standing between us, bare, undeniable, and irreversible, I moved into the small condo on a quiet street in Dilworth 2 weeks later. The space was simple, bright, and mine in a way nothing had been for years. I unpacked slowly, choosing where to place each item with a care I had never allowed myself before. Lindsay showed up on the second afternoon with a grocery bag and an apology waiting in her eyes. "I know I cannot undo what I said," she murmured, "but I want to try again. If you will let me." I stepped aside and let her in. Trying is a start. She helped me arrange dishes cautiously. She seemed uncertain, but listened more than she argued. The next week, I began volunteering at a financial literacy program for women starting over after job loss. When I told Lindsay, she smiled faintly. "That sounds like you," she said, "helping people see what they cannot yet see." I met her eyes. "It is never too late for clarity." She nodded, understanding more now than she ever had. That evening, I made tea in my new kitchen. Standing in the quiet, I had earned one decision at a time. If you would like to hear what happened after this moment, how peace began shaping the rest of my life, subscribe and stay with me for the next chapter of this journey.